and I'm going to invite Beverley to come back into the session. I have a question here from Tony. With the focus solution, can you allocate certain access to department heads to do their own budget for the relevant sub-accounts only? Now, Devon, I haven't asked you to join us, but I'm hoping that you're on the call and you can jump in and perhaps give us some perspective from a focus context here.
I believe the answer will be yes.
I should have prepared him earlier, but yeah, we'll speak on his behalf.
From what I have seen of that budgeting process, yes, I do believe you can allocate it.
Yeah, that's right. So firstly, in terms of focus security, it is very granular in terms of how you assign that security across users. So you can have certain users only seeing certain accounts based on their role. There might be certain departments, certain cost centers. In the budgeting and forecasting solution, you can specifically assign those accounts or those sub-accounts to specific individuals so that you have that collaborative approach to budgeting. So hopefully that helps, Tony. Now, Beverley, can you have a side panel in advanced payroll so you can have leave balances in the leave admin window?
Again, my answer will be yes, but I'm not a payroll guru. But as far as if we just look at the functionality of MYOB Advanced, if you can write a generic inquiry and use it in a generic inquiry, you can add that generic inquiry / dashboard into a side panel on the payroll side. Because I think the functionality is all just the same. So
maybe just adding to that, there have been a number of side panels introduced within MYOB Advanced Payroll over the last few releases. So there has been some significant enhancements around that functionality and bringing that specifically to life within payroll. So have a little bit of a look. I wouldn't be surprised, as Beverley said, that you'll see it there already ready to go. All right. At present, the non-finance users in our organization only have the ability to see or create purchase orders. How can we set up more access so that they can see, read only budget or spend, etc.?
Okay, Beverley. So that, yeah, I believe that would be the first question I would ask on that is what license does your user have? Because the license is the first point of restriction. So if they're on an employee license, they probably won't be able to get access to that because it's financial information. But other than that, depending on their license, we can certainly use user roles to restrict the access that they have and whether it's read only or whether they're able to edit it. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Hopefully that answers that.
Got another question here. They're finding it difficult to match transactions in AR and AP accounts. Would like to learn best practices and quicker methods of processing bank transactions. Now, do you have anything quick to add to that, Bev? Anything to share?
I think the only thing that I can probably share on that is if we go into the process bank transactions screen, you've got, and I don't know if I do have a few things in here. So it's a demo database. And when you've got things in here, you can create rules to help with the matching. And when you create the rules, you can choose the relevancy of these, what's in the transaction code or the transaction description, or whether you match cases or use wildcards, and whether it's between or equal or none, and those type of amounts. And you can use wildcards in this whether to sort of go whether that's in it, and that type of rule will help with the matching process. You've also got your match settings up at the top here where you can play around with the relevance of each of these key fields within the bank transactions, like reference numbers, dates, and payees, and the weighting behind it to give you a percentage of how close the match is on the transaction. So when you go auto match, it will match it based on those settings that are in there.
That's great.
Does that
So
help?
look, certainly some things to talk through. Potentially just have a conversation with your business partner, have a conversation with one of their consultants. There's lots we can fine tune around those features. Of course, do make sure that you're using bank feeds if you can as well. If you're currently not using bank feeds or set up for bank feeds, that is a very valuable feature. But as Bev has mentioned, we can fine tune that, and of course use those rules as well to make things a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I'm hoping Bruce might be able to weigh in on this conversation in terms of the functionality within the screen. I know that MYOB at one stage has been working on improving these matching processes and stuff. Bruce, are you able to add more to that?
No, not at this point in time, but yeah, there are improvements coming. In fact, there's a bigger project coming, which I can't talk too much about, but it does involve a significant enhancement to the user interface, and there's a lot of work that's being undertaken behind the scenes to facilitate that. And I guess the end result of that you'll be seeing early next year.
Well, you heard it here first. And I think you even gave us a date, Bruce. So that's fantastic.
It's a very broad, early next year's very broad, isn't it? H1, let's say H1.
H1.
We're aiming, let's aim for H1. But yeah, it's one of the most significant user interface enhancements that you've seen out of, and it delivered within Advanced. So yeah, more to come on that one, and it's a very exciting opportunity.
So we'll look forward to perhaps at the next user group getting some more details on that.
Absolutely.
Bruce.
Yep.
All right. Now, question here: how do you set up new ledgers, Bev?
Okay. So setting them up fairly straightforward. You go to your finance menu. Under your preferences, you've got ledgers. Again, this is obviously access controlled, and then you just click plus to create a new one, and give it an ID. I'll just give it a new ledger, test. And then in your type, you can choose whether it's actual reporting, statistical, or budget. The reporting ledgers are really used for intercompany kind of reporting where you've got multiple currencies involved. So don't worry too much about that if it's not applicable to you. Statistical and budget is where you would create those. What's important with the actual ledger, whilst you can set up multiple actual ledgers, you can only assign one actual ledger to a company. So your company itself can, or branch, which is interchangeable in the world of MYOB Advanced, can only have one actual ledger attached to it. So that's it.
Very good. Now, here's an interesting question, a little bit left to center, a little bit less technical, I suppose, Bev. Who should lead a new module implementation, the consultant or the company, being the client? Assigning tasks, dependencies, timeframes, etc. What are the pros and cons? Boy, we could talk about this one for a while,
Yes.
but what are your initial thoughts on that, Bev?
My initial thoughts are that, yes, you always need your consultant involved. Because they know the product, and if they've implemented you, they'll know your business as well. So they'll be able to look at the bigger picture of the whole implementation and advise accordingly as to what we can turn on and what the pros and cons are with each thing that happens. Because there's multiple ways to configure Advanced, and we've just got to get down to the right way for your business. In terms of who leads it, I would say that would be, it would depend on you as a business, what you're trying to achieve and what your budget is. Because by engaging somebody else to lead it, obviously there's a cost to that, but there is pros and cons. There's a lot of benefit in that, because when you're involved in the project and you're getting really busy, you may let things slip. And so to have an external person or somebody else within the organization or somebody not involved with the project, just managing that and making sure and keeping everybody involved on time and on track and making sure everything's delivered is a good case to be had for that.
Absolutely. And maybe just expanding upon that, Bev, I do think I had one client say to me once, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that's the reality for a lot of us is we don't necessarily know all of the options within Advanced, but also all of the best practices. And your business partner, your consultant, has typically seen more in terms of how Advanced can be applied in the many different ways that it can be applied. So I think it's really important to include an external consultant in terms of that reviewing of the current processes and the to-be processes, the way it looks like today and what it could potentially look like tomorrow. I think there is an opportunity to use internal project management resources potentially, more so to crack the whip and make sure people are doing the right things by the right time. Not that we ever have to bring out a whip for those sorts of circumstances, but that might be a way in which you can get a bit of a balance in terms of that internal stakeholder engagement and involvement, and an internal champion who drives the project, which is actually very, very important in terms of project success, as well as somebody external to bring in the technical knowledge and a different perspective and a different viewpoint in terms of how we can do things.
100%.
All right, another question here. Is it possible to have reminder emails automatically sent from the system to approvers after a certain number of days if they have not actioned their AP invoice approvals? So we've never had problems with approvers not doing the right thing, have we, Bev?
Oh, no, never. They always do the right thing. But yes, to answer your question, yes, we can. So we can set it up either probably using a business event, so a generic inquiry that does a whole bunch of exceptions to say if this approval was posted on what date and time it was posted and released to, how old it is now, and when it gets to within that time limit of say maybe 2 days, that it emails off a reminder to the relevant person who's supposed to approve it.
Fantastic. All right. And yeah, look, just to expand upon that, there's lots of things that you can do around approvals, AP, AR, no matter what side we've seen enhancements done where we can support one-click approvals through an email, for example. Yep. So if you are looking at ways of improving your efficiencies around that, certainly to reach out to your business partner. Of course, just a reminder that the MYOB Advanced mobile app is a great way to get people to use approvals. Rather than scrolling LinkedIn, maybe get them onto the app and quickly finishing up their approvals at the end of the day.
Yes. And just to mention on that, sorry, just to add to the approvals and the documents that can be approved, I think it was this 2023 release that's come out where we now have GL transaction approvals. So if you're doing a GL journal and you need that approved, we can now set an approval map with that.
Yeah, it's a great one to raise, Bev. I think we certainly see a lot of organisations where that compliance, auditability, governance become really key elements of why they adopt MYOB Advanced. And the fact that you can do that now would probably bring some relief to a few CFOs or financial controllers' minds. Although that said, you probably just given them nightmares from the fact that you can do one-sided journals with statistical ledgers.
Only on a statistical ledger, which doesn't have any financial implications. So that's okay.
All right, we'll let that go then. We'll let that go. Now, a bit of a question here for. I'll position this to you, Bev. What are your thoughts about implementing workforce management? And I'll add some context as well, but do you have any initial feedback that you've heard from clients in terms of the benefits around workforce management?
Okay, you really are asking the wrong consultant in that I have never done anything related to payroll, and I tend to hand that over to my trusted colleagues that know more about it around that.
Well, why don't I jump on that one a little bit more then?
I think that might be good. And you might want to get Bruce involved in the question answer. Sorry,
Bruce
I keep swinging to you, Bruce.
No, not much I can add as well. I'm not a payroll workforce management person. I'm squarely in the ERP camp, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, I'll have to
so
put
Stephen
my hand
may
up
just
then
be our best resource today.
Best of the day. So from a workforce management perspective, we certainly see that MYOB Advanced as a holistic business management platform. If we can incorporate payroll and workforce management into those organizations where that really does add value to the employee experience, it really does reduce the amount of manual work and overhead associated within the organization. Payroll firstly does just significantly improve the way data can flow in terms of timesheets, being a source of truth around payment in terms of leave, etc. There's lots of benefits to that process, GL allocations. There's lots of ways that an integrated payroll can help. In terms of workforce management, it really does address a certain pain point around that whole sort of rostering, award interpretation, the fact that I need to collect time, and the fact that I might want to onboard employees and manage that process. So that employee experience around a perhaps less a mobile workforce, but a shift-based workforce, people working across multiple sites. There's certain industries where there are those complications around award interpretation, and workforce management really does add huge value in those sorts of environments. If you're not looking at workforce management in its entirety, certainly the new onboarding features included for free as a part of MYOB Advanced Payroll are great in terms of that employee experience. Often we have employees who join our organizations, and then the induction process isn't necessarily smooth. You do want to give new hires the best experience possible, and I think the MYOB Advanced Payroll onboarding features do just provide a good introduction to employees in terms of that first experience with an organization. Hopefully that gives you all a little bit of context, but certainly do feel free to use that Q&A button for any more questions that you might have. All right, now there are a few questions here around payroll and workforce management that I might just leave Bruce to have a quick little look at. If you can provide some feedback on those potentially, Bruce, with some colleagues' assistance. There's a question here in terms of point of sale. Is there a point of sale add-on? For those of you that are working in that retail environment, we do see some organizations use sales orders for point of sale. There are a couple of other integrated ISVs or independent software vendors that do have fully integrated retail point of sale functionality. So just reach out to your business partner if you need more information around those. Continuing on, question here in terms of focus. David, you can feel free to jump on and add some extra context if you'd like. But the question is, does the focus budget data stay in focus or flow back to MYOB Advanced? Typically, when you're using the focus budgeting and forecasting features, that FP&A element that David talked to, you would have focus become the source of truth in terms of budgeting and forecasting. Of course, that's becoming a lot of the key reporting element in terms of that budget and forecast and financial statements data. We could actually have that flow back into MYOB Advanced if you wanted to present that information on dashboards for some reason. Typically, though, it would stay within focus. All right. Does workforce management include an award interpreter feature? So yes, I suspect that question might have been asked before we went into a little bit of detail around workforce management. It absolutely does have the ability to do interpretation of awards. There are a number of standard awards that workforce management has included out of the box, shall we say, but it is an engine by which you can actually configure your own enterprise agreements, for example, and the specific interpretation requirements around those. This can get fairly technical in terms of the way that can be applied to specific awards. So just reach out to your business partner and they can certainly provide more details. Continuing on in the workforce management theme or the payroll theme, Bruce, are you there?
I am, Stephen.
There was one question there about the wage gender equality report. I don't know if you've been able to solicit some assistance on that one.
I'm just in the process of getting some assistance on the wage gender equality report from the product manager, Madeline. But as yet, I haven't had a response on that one. But we can come back to you very shortly when we do.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll consider that one in process. And there's one question here about the development around leave calendars and payroll. We'd love to use this, but can't with the irregular shift patterns of our staff. So if you are finding those irregular shift patterns are impacting your ability to use leave, it might actually be that workforce management is a bit better placed in terms of changing shifts, rosters, and the management of that, particularly in light of leave requirements and the fact that you probably don't want certain people within certain roles or certain shifts to go on leave at the same time. Workforce management does bring strengths around that piece of functionality. So Claire, just reach out to your business partner and have that conversation around how workforce management can potentially address that gap for you. I've got another one here, and I think this might have actually been a question that came from our online registrations. Does anyone have any experience implementing a CRM with MYOB Advanced? Suggestions of software that does and doesn't play well and is good to use from a salesperson's perspective. So in terms of native integration, MYOB Advanced does support a native integration with both Salesforce and also with HubSpot. So they are two native integrations to standard connectors that are available with MYOB Advanced. MYOB Advanced CRM does provide a good baseline of functionalities if all you're really needing is sort of pipeline management and some relatively low-level marketing type functions. If you want to get a little bit more complex around your marketing automation, if you need more complexity around that sort of CRM piece in terms of automations and those sorts of things, it might be better to look at one of those two third-party CRM solutions. We've seen a lot of success with clients around HubSpot, but lots of people love Salesforce as well. So there's two options for you. Anything to add there?
Yeah, so Stephen, there's another one there called Opmetrics CRM. So that's another cloud-based mobile solution for sales teams.
Yeah, maybe to talk about that one. It is a great option. A little bit of a differentiation between Opmetrics. Opmetrics is very focused around that sort of field sales operation. Yep. So it is for people in the field doing retail merchandising, visiting supermarkets or retail stores, for example. Do we have sufficient stock? Are the retail stands at the quality that we want them to be? Taking orders actually on the road. So a little bit of a different focus in terms of Opmetrics. But for those of you that have more that field sales requirement, Opmetrics is a very, very good fit.
I would,
all right.
Sorry, if I could add something there, I would recommend
Absolutely.
If you haven't used anything in CRM before, I would recommend have a chat with your consultant, get some information from them, because there is a native CRM module within Advanced. It comes part of all the licenses. Yes, it is. It's fairly basic, but if all you're looking for is the ability to capture notes and activities around customers and set yourself reminders and things like that, and track a bit of basic pipeline sales and convert that into from a sales order into from an opportunity into a sales order, we've got all of that natively within the system. And if you're starting out, that's a good place to start. And as you outgrow that, then go into a third-party software. But obviously, if you've used something else before, maybe it might not be a good fit. So chat to your consultant, get some advice on that around your specific business requirements.
Absolutely. And just adding to that, of course, MYOB Advanced does have service case features within the CRM module as well. So if you have a servicing requirement, it can support that. And those new features Bruce talked to in terms of returns, integration from cases all the way through an RMA, some good value there.
I love that last question.
All right.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. Shall we tackle that one, Bruce?
Look, I mean, how do I put this? ERP systems are very, very similar, but very, very different. You
might want to read the question aloud. I'm not sure if it's on the screen for the attendees.
Where does MYOB see itself versus SAP, versus NetSuite, and Microsoft Dynamics? These are all tier 2 applications. I suspect you would probably class MYOB Advanced at that upper tier 2, almost encroaching on that tier 1. There's a big difference. Tier 1 applications, so you're looking at your your Oracles, your say IFS, SAP R3. I suspect that this question relates to SAP B1, which is more or less that tier 2, that business one solution. When you're looking at the likes of, say, NetSuite, it's a reasonable application. It's a pure cloud application, such as that, exactly the same as ours in that respect. It's reasonably user-friendly, but there's shortcomings in the fact that there's a higher total cost of ownership than other mid-market offerings that I've just spoken about. Customization of forms isn't really intuitive, and things like fixed assets and geomodules aren't that tightly integrated, and it's not great with inventory tracking. It's probably more, I would say, it's probably more suited to companies that aren't inventory heavy. The likes of SAP B1, for instance, that's not a true cloud product. It's a web client product. So there's issues also with job costing functionality. There's other areas around not being too strong in the ordering, the automatic ordering and inventory and the management of inventory. And then on Microsoft Dynamics, obviously that's an ex-Navision product, offers some pretty rich functionality for say, discrete manufacturers and the like. It's a pretty strong solution in that mid-market, but it also requires complex customizations to deliver to the needs of for many industries that it plays in. There's also high implementation costs. There's inconsistent methodology when it comes to deployment, because it's deployed by different obviously different partners, and there's different deployment methods. Doesn't have a native product configurator like we do in our manufacturing solution. And there's a third-party add-on that they require for scheduling that we have natively. So there's strengths and weaknesses right across the board, and it really comes down to your needs. Does MYOB Advanced suit your company better than, say, Business Central would, or does NetSuite suit your organization better than MYOB would in your case? So yeah, it's very hard to measure them pound for pound, but hopefully that just gives you a bit of an insight as to, when comparing them, there's varying degrees of complexity when doing so.
Yeah, it's more like apples and balls, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I wish it was simpler. I think we all wish it was simpler, but it's not. It's grey and vague and difficult.
Maybe just adding to that, I think the first thing to recognize is it's not just about the technology, it's how you use it.
Yep.
We do, a good piece of software can be very, very badly used. And an aging piece of software can actually be very, very well used. So I think the first thing is to look at how you implement and how you make sure that you're getting the advantages of the value, whatever platform you have brings. I would say that MYOB Advanced, based on the Acumatica platform, is probably a more modern web ERP solution, fastest growing cloud solution. And that technological stack is actually very modern compared to some of the older cloud applications. The other thing I'd identify is that from a usability perspective, Acumatica in the US in particular has won quite a number of usability awards around just that ease of use for users. And I think that's actually pretty key for all of us that want to make sure that our users are enabled and empowered to use a solution really effectively. I think the third element I'd add is just around that point of customization. The Acumatica framework and the mechanism by which you customize MYOB Advanced is one of its absolute strengths. Of course, we need to recognize when it's appropriate to customize and when it's appropriate not to. But in terms of bringing out the competitive advantage that you have as an organization, that customization ability can really add some strengths to that. And probably the last point is that whole MYOB Advanced business management platform approach. We need to take those three key elements of MYOB Advanced Business with a localized Australian, New Zealand payroll with workforce management. That's something that those other vendors can't currently provide. So yeah, look, certainly lots of things to think about there, and a good question.
And on a totally unbiased level, we've got the best people in the business working with MYOB Advanced.
Yeah, there you go. All right, now we might have to come back around the question on the wage gender equality report, but it's a good point raised. and we'll make sure that we come back to you on that one, Claire. I think that's it in terms of questions. Oh, Bruce.
Yes, no. Yes, no. I do have a response on that one. So irregular shift patterns are a challenging area at the moment, but unfortunately, we don't have plans to address that in the near term. I understand the team they're investigating WGEA, like the actual WGEA report, as either a standard payroll or a, say, Velixo delivered report. That's the update on that.